All right, so I'm going to be talking about something called Prompt Builder. Before I get into that, just a little bit about me. My name is April Dunnam. I work at Microsoft. I've been here for about 5 years now, and I work on our Power Platform advocacy team. So my job is to create a lot of content and help people get upskilled and up to speed to get the most out of the Power Platform and all the tools and technology that it offers. I do have a YouTube channel, so there's a QR code there. If you're interested, I have a lot of technical tutorials and things across Power Platform and AI and Microsoft 365 if you're interested. And if you have any questions we don't get to that maybe you think of later on, please feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. You can connect with me there, and I'm happy to answer anything that you might come up with. Okay, enough of the intro. So you're probably wondering, what the heck is this prompt builder thing? Well, it's part of the AI Builder tool that we have within the Power Platform. So AI Builder gives us a low-code set of tools that we can work with different AI models without having to write any code. So we have different AI models to do things like document processing and image processing and even like prediction type capabilities. But another thing that we have as part of AI Builder is AI prompts. And this is kind of one of the newest features and functions that we have in AI Builder. And that lets us tap into GPT models. So it's kind of giving us the ability to connect to some of the GPT capability in Azure, but in a low-code way, so we can use those across the Power Platform. So kind of how this works within AI Builder, it's so many different tools that we can have. We can work with structured data, as I mentioned, to do prediction. We can work with images and do OCR of documents. But really where Prompt Builder falls in is in the generative AI section. So we can do custom actions with GPT. We can categorize things, extract information, and all of that. So with Prompt Builder, it's really just a piece of AI Builder, but it gives us an editor where we can create our prompts. It gives us a place where we can go and manage all of the prompts that we create. We can even do things like work with data and connect our prompts to Dataverse data if we want to be able to go and extract information from there. And it even has a built-in prompt library that we can use to get started quickly. And we'll take a look at that later on in the demo so you can see how you can use that. So you're probably wondering, what are some of the things that we can really do with this? Like, where would I plug in and need to even use an AI prompt in some of the Power Platform solutions that I'm building? Well, there's so many ideas. You can use it for content generation. That is what these GPT models are really great for, is the kind of creative process of generating new content. But we can also use it for more business use cases like document processing, classifying emails. We can have an auto reply email system that we build with this. It could pretty much automate our inboxes with AI prompts if we wanted to. We can do image processing, identity validation, data analysis. Really, honestly, the possibilities are endless with what you can do with this and how it can augment what you're building. So where do we use these? We can use them in three main places in the Power Platform. One, in Power Automate. So imagine you're building a Cloudflow and you want to be able to extend that and augment that with some AI capability. So an example here, what you're looking at is an automated complaint response flow. An email comes in, you can filter that off of certain subject filters or whatever it might be, or monitor an inbox, and it can go and call a prompt in AI Builder that has a preset instructions in there of how it should respond to a complaint. You can pass it in the email subject and the email body. It can go and read through all of that and use generative AI to be able to automatically respond to the complaint. So that's one example of what we can do with this, and we'll look at more in a little bit with Power Automate. Another way we can use these is augmenting the apps that we build in Power Apps with Canvas applications. So we can, just like we can in Power Automate, integrate with some of these prompts. We can add those in as a data source in our Power Apps and add all kinds of additional capability and invoke those using Power FX. And I'll show you kind of a more fun example towards the end of this of how that can work. And finally, we can also use this in Copilot Studio. So in Copilot Studio, we can create topics, or if we want to have really fine-tuned set of instructions and of what you can do and what you want to be able to ask with your agent. So within that, we can call a prompt to be able to do specific things and call specific models and all of that. And I can show you what that looks like as well later on. Now, before we actually go and create one, let's talk about how we do this. How does this actually work? And there's three main ways that we can create a prompt in Prompt Builder. Option one you can go with the easy button. Who doesn't love an easy button? There's a new capability that is rolling out now. They're doing some, I think, A/B testing at the moment of this, so you may or may not see this in your preview environments right now if you go try it out. But you should see a new option to write your prompt with Copilot. So we're getting that Copilot treatment and experience to put in a prompt of what we want, and it can help us write the prompts because there is kind of a formula per se of how you can really write well-structured prompts that are going to get you what you want, and Copilot is going to enable you to do that. Unfortunately, I am one of the people that was not given access to this at the moment, and one of the 50% of the people that can't get it. So I can't show you this today, but if you do see this, if you want to try out any of this capability after this session, definitely give this a try and see if it can help you build your prompt with Copilot. The other option, though, if you want a other easy button, is to start with a sample prompt. And we have two main ways to do that. On our GitHub repo, we have a Power Platform prompts repository with a lot of AI Builder and Power Platform prompts in there where you can copy and paste those and get started. But also baked right into the product, there's a prompt library too. So you'll see a bunch of examples as we get into the demo here of different prompts that we can use and customize those and tweak those to get started. And then finally, of course, you can create from scratch. So if you want to do something really specific, there's not already a prompt out there in the library or the GitHub repo, and you want to build something, you can build that yourself. Now, when you are starting from scratch, though, there is a formula that I would like to make sure that you all are kind of following, because this is going to get the best result from the GPT model. And this formula is first starting with the task. So what exactly do you want this to do? And then we're going to give it some context, set expectations, and then define the output. So how does this look in a real world prompt? Well, it would be something like this. We're going to say create a product feedback summary. That's our task. Then we're going to give it the context. This would be based off of recent customer reviews. Then we're going to set the expectation. The summary should identify key themes, overall sentiment, and any recurring issues or praises. And then finally, the output, we're going to say format this to be concise and present the information in a clear and easy to understand manner suitable for a marketing team meeting. So if you typically, I would say 98% of the time, if you follow this general formula, you're going to get a good prompt that's going to give you what you need. And we'll take a look at some examples.
I love this, by the way, April. I like the way you've put this out there, because I think a lot of people talk about frameworks, but
yeah,
it's just so task, context, expectation, output, and the way you've colored it is really helpful.
well, cool. I'm glad it's helpful. So with that in mind, I've done a lot of talking, so I figure let's go into a demo and just see what this actually looks like. So first of all, how do we get to this? Well, we can get to it either from the Power Automate portal or Power Apps portal. So you can either go to make.powerautomate.com or make.powerapps.com. I'm going to start here from the Power Automate portal so we can see where we can get to it. You may or may not see in your left navigation here an AI Hub. If you don't see this, you can click on the More button, and then you could point to it from here. So we have this AI Hub here, and you can always pin it so you can easily get to that next time. And within the AI Hub, I'm going to let this load here. We have a section for prompts. So this is going to be your one-stop shop for all of your prompts, and this actually has its own landing page as well. So in the left nav, you see that kind of is showing up there. So I can click on the dots and I can make sure that's pinned, so I can get to that easily. So first thing I want to point out is where all of the prompts that you have are going to show up. So if we scroll down to the bottom, you can see I have built a lot of prompts and testing them out here. So those are all showing up here under the My Prompts tab. You can also share prompts with others. So anytime you create a prompt, it's going to be just for you unless you explicitly share it with someone. And if one is shared with you, it'll show up in this section right here. And then we have the all prompts, which is just going to show everything, whether you created it or someone else created it and they shared it with you. And of course, we have this search so I can see, what other prompts that we have. Like I know there's a sales one, so I can easily filter through this because if you start really using these, you can start collecting quite a few prompts. Okay, so that's where all the ones will show up. But then right here, we have popular templates. So this is that library
really
that I was
quick
talking
question,
about.
April, before you move on. Can prompts be shared to security groups? It's a great question.
Yeah, really good question. So we'll take a look at that right now. Um, I think, let's see, are they blocking it? Yeah. Last I checked, they're not. So it's just only users at the moment.
Mm.
I think on the roadmap, I have to double check that there it might have been sharing with security groups, but I think you can only share it with individuals at the moment. But really good question. And then also when it comes to the sharing, since we're talking about this right now, if I share this out, say I share this out with Daniel here, he'll be able to use it in his flow or in his process if he's using an app that I add this in, but he won't be able to edit it. So that's another thing of kind of these prompts are really kind of meant for, I guess, more personal use, or if you're just sharing it out, you can't have a co-owner, I guess is what I'm trying to say here, of a prompt. So just be mindful of that. You can share it so that other people can execute that in your processes, but you're going to be the only owner of that at the moment here. So we can't, so this is what I'm talking about. You can't change him to an owner. He's just going to be a user. All right. So with that, let's take a look at all of these templates. So I would, before you start building one from scratch, I would definitely look through this list and see if there's anything that you're wanting to do that would kind of be a close match for this, and then you could just customize that. So one of the ones that I'm seeing that we look through here is this classify text option. So if I click on that, it's going to fill in this screen with the prompt here. So some of the things I want to look at here, first I'm going to kind of rename this. So this is just the name of the prompt that will show up in that list. And then second, let's take a look at the prompt. According to our formula, right, it's starting off with the task, classify the text. But these things that you're seeing here, when we're writing the prompts, they can't be just static, right? We need to be able to make them usable, pass in information to them. So how we do that is with inputs. And how we can add an input is either right here, if this is just a big text box, we can do a /, and the screen will pop up. So we'll have an input that we can add here, like a new text input, or we can click add and add a new text input. So this template, the sample prompt, comes preloaded with some inputs. So this one here is the input text. So that's where we could pass in the text that we want to be able to have it classify. And then we have input categories as well. So that's where we could put in any additional categories that we have. And if we click on this section here, this is where we can see all the inputs that we have for our prompt. So one of the things that these templates also come with is some sample data. So we can see for this, we have little information about some sample data, and we have some categories that are pre-populated of, is this politics, business, sports, entertainment, whatever. And within this, before you start trying to integrate this with your process, you can do some testing to make sure it works. So we're just going to click with the sample data that it has in these two inputs. We're going to test this prompt. And this is going to go call the GPT model for us. And there you go. It has some classification. Now this is a, kind of a simple scenario, but you can imagine like for a real world use case, I might want to customize this prompt a little bit. So my categories might be different. So let's just change these categories in the sample data. And I'll put in some more because I want this, ultimately, what I would love for this to do is to help me manage my inbox and classify all of my emails, and depending on what it is, route it to specific people. So there are all of my different categories, and I'm just going to put in, let's see, some sample text here. We'll replace this sample data, and we'll save that. And then we'll do another test just to see, now that I'm really customizing this to what I want to use it for, to automating messages in my inbox. So now we'll test that again. So it's taking into account this sample data, and there you go. Now it's identified this is a partnership collaboration. And if you kind of look at the message that I have here, that makes sense. Get interested in exploring co-marketing opportunities. So it lines up to that category. So this is just a really simple example of how you can use one of these sample prompts, get started quickly, and it's really easy to use these in your automations, in your apps, and in your copilots and all that. So let me take this prompt now that we saved it. Let's close out of this, and we'll go back to our prompts tab, and we'll should see that here in the prompt section. There you go, classify text. And now let's just use this in a flow really quick. So we'll go over to my flows. We'll create a new flow. We'll just do, just to show you how this would work as far as passing in inputs, let's just do an instant cloud flow just to test this out. And we'll manually trigger this. Okay. Now, how do we call one of these prompts that we just created from a flow? Well, let's add a new action. And we have right here at the top, should be highlighted for you, but if it's not, you can also search for create text with GPT if you don't see it in that menu. And under the AI Builder action, you can connector here, you can just select this create text with GPT using a prompt action. And this is going to populate a list of every single prompt that you've created inside a prompt builder that you can then call in your flow. So I can click on this drop down and it's going to sort it by order of, newest to oldest. So there is our classified text prompt. And when I click that, we have those two inputs, right? We need to pass in the text and we need to pass in the categories to make this dynamic where we can use it in different situations. So what that's did is put those in as inputs in our flow. So now I need to go and specify what are those input categories. So let's copy those back over here. And then what is the sample text? So I'll put in something else here. This is kind of like a product feedback. Let's see if it can classify that properly. So we got our input text, we got our input categories. Now this is just a manual trigger, but now that you know how to add in this action here to call your prompt, this could be anything. This could be when an email is received and you're passing in here in the input text the body of the email. So it's just replacing the trigger in this case. So with that, let's just do a quick save. We'll save this classified test. Save that and we'll do a test. Now, I wanted to point this out before I add this in. Anytime that you're using AI prompts in your flows, you're going to get this message if you don't include an approval action. So since this is creating text for you using AI, it's going to recommend for responsible AI practice that you always have some kind of human in the loop. So that's why it's telling you that it's not going to stop you from doing it, but it's going to give you this warning that you really need to add in a create text with GPT using prompt approval so that it will go and route that to a human to review the text that's generated, make sure that there's nothing weird or inappropriate with it before actually going on and doing what you need to do with it. Now, we're not doing anything in this case. We're just kind of testing how to pass inputs in here. So I'm going to leave that for now, and I'll show you how that approval process works in a different flow that I created here in a second.
So
Okay.
quick question we have from the audience. Can custom prompts be included in solutions?
They can. Yep. So, and I have some resources at the end to some documentation about AI prompts. So I'll point you to that where you can see how that works. But it's an object that you can add in your solution. Any
Ooh, now we
questions?
have a juicy question. I don't know
Oh,
if
no.
this is we get into cost for each AI builder run. Do you know what the cost is? Currently, we have a premium license that allows us to build Power Apps and Power Automate.
Yeah, I have another resource at the end that will take you to a cost section, but essentially it's you buy packages of messages. So if you have Power Apps Premium, you get a certain number of credits that you can have within that. And each prompt, it depends on the model that you're using. And I'll talk a little bit more later on about what models we have and kind of what you're doing with that, because each model has different number of total messages that it consumes, and the messages add up, and it's like a penny per message type thing. So it's not overly clear, but there's some resources at the end where you'll be able to tell, because it all comes down to what Power Platform licensing you have and the credits that you have and what specific models you're using and all of that.
And then one
I
question
love
I've got
licensing.
you for, yeah, I mean, we could talk about licensing this whole
Yeah.
time, right? Because that is a whole nother like rat's nest. But you mentioned like the human in the loop
Mhm.
and those warnings. Do you have any like suggestions about like how to design this with like the human in the loop and like in mind? Or do you only like think about it after the fact when you've got warning signs at you?
Well, you definitely design it in mind. So I'll just jump to, before we test this out, the
Okay.
example of one that I already had built. So this would be a real world use case where we're going to do a complaint response, right? So an email is received. We're going to call this respond to complaint prompt. And this is where we will want to kind of do this with the kind of human in the loop in mind. So we get the response from AI, but then we have a specific action in the approvals connector. That is start and wait for an approval of text. And that is different from the other default start and wait for approval because it's specifically for approving AI generated text. And you'll notice that it's different because it has an input for suggested text. So what you'll do is you just fill out your title like you normally would with an approval. And then you would, if you click on this lightning bolt here, you would take the output of your prompt, which is this text property, and you would put that in the suggested text. And it would just do the normal typical approval process, but then give the user who's reviewing it a checkbox where they can kind of make any changes to it if there's anything wrong, and then approve or reject that. And then the key part is not taking this text that is generated by the AI, but taking the text that was approved by the approver. So if you look, I have a condition. So if the outcome is approved, then and only then I want to send the email response back to the person. So if we look here, what I'm doing, and we'll go right there, is I'm getting the accepted text. So this action will have an output property of the accepted text that may or may not have been changed from the approver, and that will be passed in. So that's an example of what you would always want to do in mind anytime if you're not just testing, right? That you're going to be actually sending or doing something with this AI generated text, you want to have that in. And I'll show you a reason why. So like this particular prompt right here, we can kind of look at it and I'll show you what it's doing. If it'll load, we'll see. Okay. So this is another one of the sample prompts that we have. So it's just wanting to ask it to craft a response with the input text. So that would be the body of the email. We're telling it to be mindful. It should be a courteous response. All of that, right? And before sending review for grammatical errors, all of that. So that's the prompt. Now I think I might have disabled this. Let me turn this back on so we can actually test it again. All right. So let's run a test and I'll show you what this whole process would look like. So I already have a run. So I had sent an email to myself with a kind of a complaint here about slow shipping times. So I'll do a test. All right, so it's running right now. We can track what it's doing. It's got the AI generated response, and now it's going to send that approval. So we'll just kind of check the email, see if I got anything over here yet. Maybe, sometimes it takes a minute. You can do it. Just being a little slow today.
The demo gods,
Yeah,
right? And
right?
maybe while we wait, there was a question I was kind of waiting for a good moment. Question
Sure.
was, for the trigger that you have due to the 30-day duration limit, what step could you add to re-trigger and come back to the same state it was at last?
We can leverage like child flows or something like that. Could be a good way to do that. And I'm sure I know like Ed's a flow genius. He might have some ideas too. So like on how to handle that. But
Where's our
that
flow
would
genius at? Any
yeah.
comments, Mr. Flow Genius?
Did somebody ring?
Yeah, do you see the question in the chat? April was just talking about using child flows and was wondering if you have any other alternatives.
Allows us to build power out of it. My Teams keeps bouncing away from me. I'll take a look at it and I'll type something in if I have something. I don't want to slow you down.
Cool. Sounds good. Okay, well, we finally got our approval email. So this is what it would look like if you're doing the human in the loop. So they'll get an email like this. This is the AI generated text. So they're saying, thanks for sharing the document. Blah, blah, blah. If you have specific questions, I'll be happy to help, blah, blah, blah. All right, so if I want to, I can make a change at this point. So I could just maybe add a thank you message because that's missing. And then I can approve it. Oh, and I even misspelled. Oh, well, it's fine. Yeah, I did better than I did. Didn't misspell my name. Okay, and you can put in any comments and all of that, and then it will kind of continue on with the process there. All right, I got lots of these. I did lots of testing earlier and they were hung up, so I'm getting tons of approval requests coming in here now, which is awesome. Okay, now just waiting for that email. Let's check on our flow. Okay, so condition looks like it met the condition, terminated. So I should get an email with that response here in a second. It's just being slow as always to run there. But that's kind of what that process will look like and why that's really important to have the human in the loop there. Okay, so we saw a really basic example, just kind of what you can do with the prompt there. Now let's kind of go back to the slides for a minute, because I want to show some other things that we could do with these prompts, because this isn't it, what you just saw, obviously, but wait, there's more. All right, so first things you should know. So what we just saw was using some very simple inputs there, some text-based inputs, but these prompts can work with image and file inputs as well. And this is what we call multimodal capability. So with this, we could pass in an image, like take this example of a sales contract. So maybe you want to be able to upload a sales contract and have it extract key information like the terms and the payment schedules and different clauses in that. Prompts can handle that as well. So this really takes it to the next level and allows you to handle it and use these for a lot of different other use cases that you might have. But of course, with that, so we can use inputs, they can be files and images, but there are some limitations. All of this is still relatively new. It's evolving fast, like every day. Just that Copilot capability that I mentioned, that was just released, like I think yesterday on Monday. So that's all changing really fast. But at the current time, a few limitations to know about if you're wanting to do things like writing a prompt that can handle file or image inputs. First, it can only handle 25 megabytes file size for all files passed into a prompt at one time. So keep that in mind as far as the size of your files. And as far as supported file types, it can handle PNG, JPEG, and PDF at the moment. So that's what's supported. And it's really best for docs that are under 50 pages. If you try to upload really big documents there, it's gonna struggle. I've done a lot of testing on this, so it can be not as accurate, and I notice it really tends to struggle with documents that have a lot of table lines and things like that. So just be mindful when you're thinking through scenarios and if it's going to be a good fit for prompts. And then finally, if you want to use this in Copilot Studio, image and document support isn't supported in prompts within Copilot Studio yet, hopefully soon. But there are still, despite all these multimodal limitations, there's still a lot of good use cases for where you might want to use this, and I'll show you one here in a bit. Okay, so earlier the question about licensing came up, and I mentioned, well, it kind of depends. It's all message-based, so each prompt that you put in is going to have a certain number of messages that it consumes, and that's going to depend on the model that you use. So we can actually choose from 3 different models in our AI prompts. The default is the GPT-4o mini model, and that's really good for most text-based use cases, like simple ones like the classification that we looked at, like the responding to a customer complaint, and all of those use cases. It's going to be the lowest cost and most effective for those use cases, so like summarization and all of that, and it's going to be really fast at processing. But if you do want to use the multimodal capability, you're going to have to use the GPT-4o model, and that's going to have a slightly higher cost. So each one of these cost-wise is going to go up as you move up to the models. But GPT-4o is what you have to use if you want to do image capability. It's really good at document processing and really complex content creation tasks that you might have. And then the O1, which is the newest model, that's going to be the highest, most premium pricing, but it's good if you need to do deep reasoning, basically. So it's going to be slower because of that, but if you need to do really complex data analysis and reasoning, that's the model that you're going to want to go for. And again, at the end, I'll have a link to some documentation where you can see the different pricing and stuff for all these.
Are the messages like anywhere, are they similar to Copilot Studio? Because Copilot Studio has like the same idea of like messages and different message rates. Don't know if they're related.
Yeah, I mean, they're very similar. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, pretty much. Kind of same concept there. Good questions. Okay, the other thing, and we'll look at this when we go back to the demo, but there's some settings that we can configure on our prompts as well, and one of them is the temperature setting. So what this means is we have essentially two different options. The temperature can be 0 all the way up to 1. And it really depends how you set this on the functionality that you're wanting to do in your prompt. So if you are wanting to kind of do more consistent, predictable outputs, like the classification is a good example, and even the responding to an email would be a good example, then temperature of 0 is good because that's good where you need high accuracy and less variability. But you might bump up the temperature to 1 if you're doing creative tasks. Like if I want a prompt that's helping me write a novel or helping me write a blog post even, right? But you might want it to be a little bit more creative with the responses. So the higher the temperature, basically, the more it can think outside the box of your prompt a little bit. So that's really all it comes down to is if you need a little bit more creativity, try bumping up that temperature and see if it gets you a better result. And we can look at an example of that. And then finally, the output of these prompts doesn't have to just be text like we saw in the previous demo. We can actually have this output JSON. And why would we want that? Well, if we're trying to get some information and say maybe add that into a database or show it in a more structured format, outputting that to JSON would be really useful. So say we're extracting information from an invoice and we want to be able to take that and put it into our Dataverse database or whatever system we might have. We can put that in JSON and just easily parse through the JSON and map those values to our fields rather than having to read through a block of text. So you do have that capability, and I'll show you an example of how that works here in a second. Actually, I'll show you right now. So this is kind of, to me, like the more fun demo of what we can do, because I'm going to show you how to do a multimodal prompt in Power Apps. Okay, so we'll go back over here to our prompts. Okay, so we're going to go back to the AI Hub. And then one of the prompts I have is a Lego prompt. So I built a Power App.
Real quick question, April. Is an approval action still mandatory for AI builder actions?
It's not mandatory, so it'll be a warning in there, but it's not going to force you to do that. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Sorry to cut you off.
No problem. Cool. So the use case for this prompt, and it's a pretty long prompt, so we'll go through it line by line, is I created an application. So let's open up called the Lego Vault. So I want to be able to utilize AI to, I'm a kind of a Lego fanatic, if you can't tell, like behind me there, I have lots of different Lego sets. I want to be able to have an inventory of that, but I don't want to have to manually put all that in. So I want to be able to just take a picture of one of the Lego sets that either I haven't built yet or that's fully built and have a prompt automatically go out and get all of the detail about that set for me. So that's the purpose of this particular application that I built. So I can only do this by leveraging AI prompts, and I really need its help. So I put together this prompt. Now let's take a look at what I did here. So I went to add a new prompt, I created one from scratch, but first I changed the model. So this is where you can go and define the different, oh, did my screen stop? Sorry, I just saw a message in the chat.
Yes. Yes. Not seeing your screen. I thought that was by design.
Oh, okay.
Good catch, Lucas.
Thanks, Lucas. Okay, gotta love Teams just randomly stopping. Okay, how about now? We good?
You were rock solid.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for catching that before I got too far down the line. Okay, so I'll just start back from where I was. So to create this initial prompt, I just went back to our prompts, and this time I selected the build prompt from scratch, and I started configuring all this. A few things that we just talked about as far as the settings we configured that I wanted to point out. Right here, you see this model drop down. So this is where I was talking about how the default model is GPT-4o mini, but we can change it to the standard 4o or the premium 01, which is currently in paid preview. So we could just switch between any one of those we want. So if I'm wanting to do one where I can have image inputs, I will need to switch to this one. And if we look on the left-hand side here too, and click on the settings icon, here is our temperature. So if we wanted to bump that up, say all the way to 1, if it's doing something creative, we could do that. And yeah, so that's pretty much it. And the output as well. This is on this tab, if you can see that in the upper right-hand corner. So we could change that to JSON if we wanted. So I'll show you how all of that works in a prompt that I've actually built, which is this Lego prompt. So there's a lot going on here. So let me first show you what I'm doing. So obviously the task, like what is this doing? You're an expert Lego set reviewer, and I'm asking it to review this image of a completed Lego set. Now here, when I went to add, I selected the image or document option. So rather than doing just a text input, now I can reference a file. And so you'll see with this input, I can directly upload in the testing screen a file to test this out, which I'll actually do now so we can see what this would look like. So I got a lot of pictures of different Lego sets that I have. So let's try this one. Okay, so now we have our sample data. And let's just take a look at the prompt. So I'm saying it's a, whoop, and then I messed up my prompt there. There we go. Lego expert, review this Lego set, an image I'm passing in. And then I'm going to ask it to identify a bunch of stuff. First, I wanted to get the set name, and I'm giving it an example of what that might be. I wanted to tell me the number of pieces in the set, the year it was released. I wanted to be able to do a category. So this is where it has to do some classification again, right? So based off of what the Lego set is, would this be a Technic set, a creator expert, things like that. Then I wanted to get the cost, the item number, the age range. I wanted to even go look up the instructions for me so I don't have to keep all of my instruction sets. Then I wanted to write a description, so be a little creative here and write a description of what you see in the Lego set and what it is. And then I wanted to give me some recommendations. So based off of what the Lego set is, recommend other sets that I might like so I can keep fueling my Lego building habit. And the difficulty as well. So Lego, they don't really put a difficulty out there on their website, right? So this is where I'm asking, giving it some conditions to determine that itself. So I'm saying the difficulty should be based off of the, whether it's the age recommendation, sorry, the piece count, or and the complexity of the build. Are there a lot of movable parts, intricate structures, and things like that? So I'm giving it those conditions for how it should determine whether this is a beginner, intermediate, advanced, or an expert build. And then finally, expert build time. So this is where I wanted to also kind of come up with, based off of the difficulty and the piece count and the complexity and all that, about how many hours should that take to build. And then the inventory status. I want it to look at the set and tell me, is this something fully built? Is it unbuilt? Or is it partially built? So it's going to handle all of this stuff for me. And this is how complex and how detailed you can get in your prompts to really get the most out of this. Now, when I'm doing this in my app, my goal is to take a picture, have it classify all this, and then be able to put that in a Dataverse table. So I don't want just a text output. This is where I would want to use the JSON output capability. So if I go edit this, we'll see that it automatically detecting the format based off of what I have here. So you do an initial test of the output here, and it generates the JSON, schema for you. So we have set name, all of that, number of pieces. And if I were to test this prompt again with that new Lego set, let's just run a quick test before we add it into our Power App, and we'll see what it comes up with. So that one's a little different. It's in like a roses in a vase. So let's see. Okay, so botanical collection, flower. All right, it's got the cost, got some suggestions. So yeah, there you go. All of that in a really easy to digest format that I can then move into a database with this set. Okay, so a lot going on there. How do we actually use this in our app? So we're going to go over here to Power Apps. And then this is just going to be like any other data source. So in our data tab, I already have it in here, but we would just go to add data and you would search for the name of your prompt. So I just called this prompt Lego, just to reference that again. So we'd search for Lego. It's not going to show up because I already have it in there, but it's going to show this header for a custom prompt. So you know that you're pointing to the right thing, and you'll have the blue AI Builder logo there. So you know what you're getting. So there it's in our data source. This is a premium connector with AI Builder, so just keep that in mind when you're using this. So you'll need the necessary licensing. And now I can use that inside of my app. So where I want to use this in my screen, let's go over here to the New button, is right here on the Next button. So I'm going to upload an image. And then once I do, that's where I want to call my prompt. So let's take a look at how to do this. And let me just zoom in a little bit so you can see it a little better. So this is all I'm doing to call my prompt right here. I'm going to store the output in a variable. So I'm using the update context and creating a variable called var results. And then I'm just typing in the name of my prompt, the data source there. And then you do a dot predict. So with that, it's going to tell you what any required inputs that you have for that. In our case, it's just that one image that we require as an input. So I'm going to pass in the uploaded image from my image control. And then you can do a dot using your dot notation, and you can get the structured output of that prompt call. And that's all you have to do to be able to call this inside of your app. And since we have that JSON-based structured output, if I want to go write this to my data source, I can just do a patch like I would to write this to a data source and do a var results dot and get all of those different properties. So if I were to say go over here, maybe I want to do average build time again. I'll show you what this looks like. There's var results dot. These are all of the different JSON objects from the output of that particular prompt. And that's all I have to do to reference. So with that in mind, let's remove that and let's just kind of test this out and see if it works, right? So we're going to add something new here. I'm going to upload a picture. I'll go over to photos. And let's take this Lego Optimus Prime that we have. Let's see if it can identify that. And here's the moment of truth. We're going to click next, and it's going to call our prompt. Now, a lot is going on behind the scenes, so you can kind of see these dots at the top. So it's kind of running and executing our prompt there. Can take a minute. You might want to have a loading screen, kind of like notification up there that something's happening since it takes a little while. But there you go. So that's all that I did is call my AI prompt, and we have Lego Optimus Prime. I'll click on that, and here is all the information that it was able to get from that. Isn't that crazy? So it's got that it's Lego Optimus. It's got the set number. It tagged it with creator expert. We have the number of pieces, the age range, the year released, the price, and even the instructions here. Wow, and a description of that. Now, I think I forgot to do some mapping, so that's the only reason why the average build time and difficulty isn't showing in there, because I just added those last minute. And oh man, the link is broke there. Sometimes, you got to tweak them just a little bit, and sometimes you'll get like a different result each time on that. So that's why you, again, always check it out and make sure that that is working. Let's see. Wonder if that works. No. Okay. We can always run it again and see if it gets the instructions. But I mean, that's saving a lot of time here by being able to call this in. So, I mean, this is a fun use case, right? But imagine that you're building an application to track expenses and you want to be able to automatically classify those expenses, right? You upload a picture of a receipt and it automatically extracts all the details of that. That's another good use case of something that you could do like within an app with an AI prompt to be able to get all this information. So we could try another one just for fun here. We'll do one more. We'll go back to photos. Let's see. Let's try this one. See if it can get that. And see what it comes up with.
That must have taken a while to build.
Not honestly though, that's the cool thing about it. It's not too long. Like, I mean, maybe an hour of testing, like just to fine tune it how I want it. And that was about it. Yeah. Not too bad. But again, there's all the details of that. And I don't know why now, when it was just working, it's not getting the instructions correctly if it was just working in my testing. So it is a little, you're going to run into that when you work with prompts. It's going to maybe 1 minute to the next. You might get slightly different result. And then just to show you what's going on the back end. So I have just this table. So let's go ahead and open that up really quick. Or
We
relatively
got a question
quick.
too, while we wait for it to load.
Yeah.
In terms of production apps, is there a way to make the model provide back the same schema outputs instead of changing now and then, like the variability?
I mean, that's just the nature of any GPT model, right? Is you can't really control the variability other than that toggle that we were looking at as far as, let me open that up again here really quick.
The temperature toggle?
Yeah, the temperature toggle. I mean, if you have it on 0, that's about the best that you can get as far as that goes. So I think it really comes down to setting it to 0 if you want it to have the least amount of variability, and then really crafting your prompt instructions as best as you can. So another thing you can do that wasn't in the formula necessarily is specifying what should happen if it can't find something. So like if I wasn't getting the instructions correctly, like if you can't find the instructions, do not include anything else or something like that. So that can kind of help with some variability possibilities to do a little bit of almost error handling, I guess, in your prompt too, if you run into any issues. But yeah, other than that, unfortunately, not much we can do as far as the variability goes. Okay. And then I was going to show you that back end real quick so you can see that it's actually adding stuff in here. Wow, it's dragging today.
We can fill the air with more questions.
Yeah, keep going. Why I'm trying to get this to load. What else we got?
I think when you were mentioning like use cases, it almost seems to me this is a great way to just like parse information to your point, right? Like receipts is a good one, but like just online docs, if it's like, hey, I need to get like
Yeah.
like an inventory list, or I need to get like dimensions, for like analytics. You could possibly use this to like go build that table.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so many use cases, but it's really good for that, like processing like documentation and information. Like I have one that summarizes long emails for me, for example. So like reads through stuff and give me auto summaries. So it's really good for those type of use cases. Okay, so here's what I was finally trying to show you. There's our backend Dataverse table where you can see, and I mentioned that I just kind of forgot to do the mapping. So there's the status that didn't get carried through. And the recommendations, and I'll just show you all the other ones. Let's see, difficulty, where we got build time. Let's make those show really quick so we can see those as well. Come on. Wow, my mouse is acting up and everything. There you go. So like it identified intermediate for this one, for example. So you can kind of see the back end of what's going on there with that particular prompt. Cool. And then, yeah, any other questions?
Yes, we had a question. Are there capabilities to embed a semantic model of an agent with a YAML format that is leveraged by AI builder actions, which I believe Power Platform uses a lot of YAML, right?
Yeah, it does. I don't know of any way to do that, what you're asking though. I don't know if anything is coming. I have to look at the release planner to see if there's any updates or capabilities coming down, but at the moment, I know you can't really do that.
Hmm. And then another great question. This table that we're looking at in the back end, was this created also by Copilot or by AI, or did you build this table when you like built the demo?
I built it myself because one of the things that you'll notice when using Copilot, I kept trying to ask it to build a Lego inventory. And if you're using like a trademark name like that, it does not want to recognize that and let you build that. So there was not a lot of fields. So I just kind of created it myself. But I use it all the time. I use the Copilot capability to create tables and apps and everything because it is
Got it.
so handy.
And this is the Dataverse table, and that was part of the
Yeah,
question. But does it matter if you use a Dataverse table or like a SharePoint
not at
list or
all.
anything? No.
Just
Okay.
licensing wise, just again, be mindful if you're using a prompt that's counts as a premium connector as we saw. So you will need a premium Power Apps license for that. So you can't, unfortunately, if you're just trying to get by with the Microsoft 365 license that gives you Power Apps access and being able to write to SharePoint, the minute you add an AI prompt in there, you need a premium license.
And I guess if you're already going premium license, why not use the premium backend that you don't have to manage?
Yeah, I mean, unless there's just some specific use case where you really want the data in SharePoint. But yeah, exactly. Cool.
And just to continue on that, like, have you found a lot of benefit to, building your like AI-based solutions and having Dataverse in the background? Does it make you easier to continually extend the AI features because you're using Dataverse?
It's definitely more integrated, and especially if you're wanting to use some of the more like plan builder capability to be able to design your solutions and have them all work together. I mean, Dataverse is the way to go. Like if I ever want to extend this and have like a model-driven app backend, having it in Dataverse is going to be really helpful. But as far as just specifically the AI capabilities, I mean, not necessarily a difference in the AI prompt if the data is in Dataverse, unless you want to do grounding. So that's one thing. Thanks for the reminder on that I didn't really show. So one of the other things that we can do with this, if we go to add, is we can directly reference knowledge in here. So if you do use Dataverse, which is probably the recommended way, then directly in your prompt, you can reference stuff from your table. So if I wanted to make sure, say in the recommendations, that I didn't recommend something that was already recommended and in that table, I could say something like, don't recommend something already, and then I could do an input, and I could search for the Lego inventory or Lego recommendations, and I'll point to, where's the name? Somewhere, there you go, set name. And we can even do filter attributes and things like that. But now I'm just directly going and getting information from a Dataverse table in my prompt without having to do any additional calls like in a flow or in the app or anything like that. So that's a really big benefit of having the data in Dataverse in your prompt. This is that grounding capability is what it's called.
That is pretty amazing. And so you could probably get pretty sophisticated when using
Yeah.
Dataverse with Power Platform.
Yeah, there's lots of good examples. There's a learning path too that walks you through, and I have a link to it at the end, and the resources that walks you through creating a grounding prompt and showing an example of that where you can use some reference Dataverse data. But I mean, it's pretty powerful. I think it is on the roadmap to eventually support more data sources for grounding, but at the moment it is just Dataverse. Cool. Trying to think if there's anything else demo-wise I
Just
wanted
one
to
more
show.
real quick. Because it's Dataverse, that means you can use dynamics, right? Like you can be pulling in like dynamics data.
Yeah, I mean, if as long as it's accessible in there, I mean, you can pull that in. Yep,
Pretty slick.
yep, pretty cool. Okay, so let me see. Oh, the only other one thing I was going to just touch on really quick is I mentioned you can use these inside of Copilot Studio as well. So how that would work is you would use this inside of a topic like what you see here. So I have kind of an agent to help with travel, and I have a prompt that will, if we look at the details here, come on, that will formulate a travel plan. So I just wanted to give me 4 options of activities to do based off of the destination that I'm going to, and return a numbered list. So this might be something I want to have in my chat with the agent. So this is just a kind of an action that you would add in here. So I could go add and add a new prompt, and then now I have that accessible inside of my agent. So an example of this, as I'm chatting with this, I could say, give me recommendations, if I could type, for things to do. Dang it, to do on my trip. There we go. And what it should do, so first it's going to ask, I want recommendations and where am I planning to travel? So you all can tell me if I'm right. I'll say I'm going to Portland. And now it's calling the prompt here. And here we go. So we suggest that you go to Forest Park, discover one of the largest urban forests in the US. Cool. Visit a local coffee shop. Yeah, I love coffee. Check out the Portland Art Museum and walk across the Hawthorne Bridge. So now just using that prompt, used the GPT model, just the 4.0 mini one, and use that within the context of our agent in this case. I don't know how accurate is all that. Is that pretty good recommendations? Or
It's pretty good. I love the Forest Park. That's one of my favorites. The Portland Art Museum. I mean, that's always a plus. I'm surprised the Hawthorne Bridge of all bridges it's said to cross. And
It's
I mean,
the oldest bridge in Portland.
oh, is that why?
Yeah.
Huh. I mean, typically you'd think like Burnside or like the new bridge over by Southwest, but that makes a lot of sense then. It's historic.
well, cool. So yeah, I mean that's basically the main things. I did have some resources as I mentioned. So one, the prompt library. If you do, have some really good ideas for things that you'd like to do in AI Builder and you want to share with others, if you add that into our prompts library, you can get a badge. So we have a Prompt Pro badge that you can get and share on social. And then I have a bunch of resources that I wanted to make sure that you all have. As far as at the bottom, there's one that will give information on licensing and how credits work and all of that. There's an FAQ doc with a lot of frequently asked questions that it's really good to reference. There's a learning path, as I mentioned, that will walk you through if you want to use those grounded prompts that connect to your Dataverse data. It has an exercise on that and how to use that inside of an app and how to use that in a flow. So you can kind of have hands-on instructions if you want to try this on your own. And we have a prompt guide. So all the stuff that I showed as far as best practices for structuring your prompts, there's more information available in that prompt guide. And there's, again, a link to the prompt library and, of course, my YouTube and the Copilot Learning Hub if you just want to learn more about AI and Copilot and all that.
April, you are a world of resources.
Got a lot. It's just tons of opportunities to keep learning on this stuff.
Well, I would love it if people in the audience wouldn't mind to just come off mute, turn your camera on, and I would love if we could just give a round of applause to April. And that was an awesome end-to-end walkthrough of using Prompt Builder and like leveraging a large language model in multiple different use cases. And who doesn't love Legos?